Hello and welcome to episode 239 of the Daily Fantasy Edge. My name is Adam Levitan. I'm one of the analysts here at DraftKings. I'm the father of Jerry, the most beautiful beast in the world, and we are coming off of an extremely low-scoring week. And we knew it would be, right? We talked about it on the three-man, talked about it in the intro to Leverage on Friday. Given the teams not on the slate, Saints, Panthers, Chargers, Chiefs, Texans, Rams, and the matchups on the slate, Tampa going into Baltimore, Indy facing Dallas, Green Bay going to Chicago, etc. It was easy to see a really low-scoring slate coming. So I think on slates like this, we have to really prioritize the safe plays on the expensive end, even if they're a little bit overpriced. And that's why I thought Ezekiel Elliott's ridiculous role was a must for cash. That's why I thought Joe Mixon's 20-plus touch projection with pass game work was a must at home against the Raiders. That's why I thought Dalvin Cook's expanding role and his pristine matchup at home against the Dolphins was a must as well. And that's why I felt okay knowingly overpaying for Julian Edelman's really high target floor and catch rate. So while I liked Eric Ebron and I liked Juju and I liked Fournette and I liked Jared Cook, we can't argue that there wasn't more uncertainty around them given their price. So I prioritized those three running backs and then went from there. And once I did that, there was just no way I was going to be able to get Juju or Cook or Ebron or Fournette, etc. I know a lot of people were shocked that I played Kenny Stills and Robert Foster in cash. People call me a donkey, etc. And honestly, in years past, I never would have made plays like that in cash. But those who have been listening all season know I'm really, really trying to make sure all my players have a legit 20 to 25 point ceiling. Even the cheap wide receivers, especially the cheap wide receivers. Like I'm not playing Danny Amendola or Sterling Shepard or Quincy Enunwa, or whatever else dusty wide receiver that needs like 12 targets to get 20 points. I'm just not. And on a really low scoring slate like this one was, getting a big play or two from a cheap wideout can actually break the slate. So yeah, Stills didn't work out, but playing Foster, who's this, ridiculous athlete playing the most aggressive offense in the NFL, Josh Allen still leads the league in average depth of target, I believe, running deep routes. Robert Foster is, that worked. So I get the skepticism and honestly, maybe it is wrong, maybe it is bad, but it's been successful for me all season. And it's really just like a changing of the mindset to be willing to gamble on upside once we have three really safe running backs. And like so many people are building their teams off of median projections, which tend not to reflect the ceilings that I'm talking about. Like guys who get short targets will typically project better. I got a question from Logan Grubbs on this topic too. He said, early in the season, you said Michael Thomas's low average depth of target as safety for your cash lineup was a good thing. This week, you said Robert Foster being tied to Josh Allen's really high ADOT was a good thing. Is it simply safety for the elite wide receivers versus upside for the cheap ones when it comes to using average depth of target in research? Yeah, good point, Logan. And I think that's a great point. Like Tyreek Hill at 9,100. Yeah, of course, I recognize Tyreek Hill's ceiling. I think Michael Thomas, when he was being used pre-Engram, the way he was being used pre-Engram in this Saints offense, pre the Saints defensive turnaround, was better for cash. At the low end, like getting, whether you get 8 points from Sterling Shepard or 3 points from Sterling Shepard, like it doesn't really matter. So I think at the low end, taking shots on guys, like there was that Sammy Watkins week where I got really lucky and he went for like 30 something points at like 4,600 or something, like giving yourself at least a chance at that, I think has been important and a huge change for me. I hope that makes sense, Logan. I know I was kind of talking out of both sides of the mouth there with the Michael Thomas thing. I want to talk about the Leonard Fournette situation because, man, oh man, this one hurt. I didn't have Fournette in cash at all, but I actually played a lot of GPPs this past week, way, way, way more than I usually do. And I had Fournette on about 60% of those rosters, made like 30 GPP rosters this week, had Fournette on like 60% of them. So Fournette had 13 touches in the first half and 1 in the second half. He also was asked to return kickoffs for the first time since he was a freshman at LSU. And of course, after the game, it's so sick. After the game, it's revealed that that was the plan, right? The Jags wanted to get an extended look at this kid, Dave Williams, to see if he can be their backup in 2019. Carlos Hyde was inactive. Carlos Hyde's going to be gone from this team. They want to see, hey, can Dave Williams be our backup in 2019? So let's bench Leonard Fournette for the whole second half of this meaningless Week 15 game, and we'll see. And, it's really easy to say, well, we should have known better. We shouldn't trust running backs on dead teams. But if that's the case, then we can't use Mixon. Then we can't use, Eli McGuire. We can't use Saquon Barkley, etc. So look, I mean, for me, the Fournette situation, for me at least, is a reminder that information is always going to be the most important thing. Like data and matchups and player roles, etc. are great for sure. But the edge generated by that is like fractional compared to information. Like these guys, the pregame announcers like Collinsworth and Michaels, they get to like talk to the coaches about like the game plan before the game and stuff. Like that's the nuts, right? It kind of reminds me of that famous line from Wall Street where, Gordon Gekko, Michael Douglas tells Sheen, he's like, stop sending me information and start getting me some. Now obviously Douglas was getting into some shady stuff in that movie. That's not what I'm talking about. But to me, information is always going to be king. Like, it's worth it. It's worth the time to read beat writers every day. If I had infinite dollars, if I was, hashtag how rich, I'd actually hire 32 reporters to cover each NFL team every day and look out for and only ask for fantasy information, period. Like, that's your job. You cover the team like a rabid dog every single day, but only for fantasy information. So like, there's no way my Jaguars guy who I hired wouldn't find this out before the game. The about Fournette. Like the regular Jags reporters just weren't looking for it. They didn't care. They weren't asking for it. They didn't have the sources to find it out, or they didn't ask their sources, but the fantasy reporter would. So yeah, maybe Fournette would have busted anyways if he played the second half, but he just never had a chance with this plan from the Jags. So given the information that I had at the time, I don't really have too many regrets about it. I mean, that's just life. You can only make the best possible decision with the information in hand. It is what it is. I wanted to touch on Rob Gronkowski also. I was shocked, absolutely shocked that he was 26% owned in the Millie Maker at a $5,800 tag. Third highest owned player on the entire slate behind only Zeke and Mixon. Highest owned tight end by a wide margin over Jared Cook and Eric Ebron. I wrote about why I thought Gronk was a fade in leverage on Friday, and that was at, projected ownership of 15%. 26% is just insane for a player who is so clearly an average tight end at best right now. Like, yeah, I'm aware he had 8-107-1 against Miami in week 14. That was like a wild shootout, one of the highest scoring Patriots games of the entire year. And he still only saw 8 targets, and he caught all of them. Like, in order to go have a good game, he had to catch all 8 of his targets against one of the worst tight end defenses the NFL has seen in the last couple of years. So to pay $1,500 for Gronk, a total shell of himself, like dude can barely even run out there anymore. It's just crazy to me. I mean, at elevated ownership and elevated price. The guy has 6 games this year under 10 DraftKings points. He's only played in 11 games, 6 of them under 10 DraftKings points. He's been over 20 DraftKings points just twice. And after every bad game, it's always, well, the defense was doing this to him, or, the offensive line needed him to block more. That's just excuses to me because we want to believe in the old Gronk, right? Like, we want to remember it's hard to let go of the guy who is arguably the greatest tight end ever. But it's over, man. Like, injuries have crippled him. It happens. And as I noted last week with the Matt Friedman stuff on Antonio Brown, I always want to be early on writing guys off than late on old guys, I want to be on the early side before they start declining, because at that point they're still expensive, they're still really highly owned, and there's just such a big edge to being off them early. It's one of the biggest edges that we can find. And even if I'm wrong, right? Like, I was obviously wrong on Larry Fitzgerald for a couple years. He was like crushing at age 32, age 33. But I'd rather be wrong on the early side, because like, at least when I'm done with a guy early, I have a chance at replacement production. Like the guy that I played instead of Fitz, he could actually be okay. When you sink your teeth into these big names at a weakening projection at huge ownership, it's just a disaster. So yeah, just some thoughts on Gronk there. Let's get to the 4-man, and I was fortunate to coast to a win. I was the only one to play Ben Roethlisberger, which was surprising. Only one to play Dalvin Cook, which really surprised me. On the Dalvin Cook versus Jalen Samuels thing, obviously Jalen Samuels was an awesome play. I thought what tilted it to me towards Dalvin was the offensive coordinator change in Minnesota. The matchup I thought was at least slightly better, if not significantly better, home against Miami. And the pass game role for Dalvin Cook really is not that far off of Jalen Samuels' pass game role. But anyways, the key to my lineup in the 4-man was Robert Foster. Someone on Twitter sent me the line, Foster, Australian for sex. And I like that. I'm sorry I forgot the name of the person who sent that to me, but that's a good one. If you guys, I don't remember when these commercials were, but there was a time when this Foster's beer, this Australian company, I mean, they had so many commercials. Every football game, every commercial break had a Foster's commercial. So it would be like, Foster's Australian for, peanut butter and jelly or whatever. But this is Foster Australian for sex. I like that. Definitely using that. Al came in second in the 4-man, went Brady at quarterback. And I actually liked Brady considering the price difference between him and Ben. The key for me was in my lineup, I didn't have Jalen Samuels, didn't have Juju, didn't have Vance McDonald, didn't have Antonio Brown. I like them all, but just didn't think that they fit the optimal lineup construction. So I wanted to get some Pitt exposure. Thought Pittsburgh was going to play well, and Ben was a good way to do it. Al went Michael Gallup and Kenny Stills at wide receiver, going Gallup over someone else at wide receiver allowed him to get up to Ebron at tight end. He went Samuels over Dallin and Gallup over another one of the 4K guys, and he gets up Ebron at tight end. He went Brady over Benny, so he's up to Ebron at tight end. And I liked Ebron, man. I thought he was priced appropriately, but for him to have one catch is just shocking. Really tough to explain fail for Eric Ebron. Yeah, the game got away from the Colts, but still, for Eric Ebron to have one catch is just crazy. But $5,900, I think, was an appropriate price, certainly not a bargain. In third place in the 4-man was our Cullen, the legendary R. Cullen, two-time winner of the Listener League. He came in third. Not sure if he swapped here, but he had Mixon Samuels. Then he had Ferkser and George Kittle, 2 tight ends. May have been a late swap there, I'm not sure, but fell behind early with Mohamed Sanu at 4,600. I didn't really like that play. I thought if you're going to go that route, and it was thin, but if you're going to go that route, Calvin Ridley, who I played a bunch in GPPs, I thought was better for a higher ceiling if you thought Patrick Peterson was going to be locked on to Julio and shut him down. And of course, in dead last, DFL yet again somehow is Peter. Started off with Dak, Zeke, and Gallup. I don't like that. I mean, 3 Dallas players on the road, coming off of one of the best possible spots, right? A home game against the Eagles. And now you go on the road to a quietly difficult spot against a pretty decent to good Colts defense. To have so much equity tied up in Dallas with Dak, Zeke, and Gallup would be thin for me for 50-50s. Maybe this was a league's team. I don't know. And also Dallas's pass game struggles have been so well documented against zone defense. So didn't like that. He also played Sterling Shepard, which I already talked about, why I wasn't on that. He had Ebron. So, I mean, he was just drawing stone dead after 1 o'clock. He had to pivot. Looks to me like he got off Samuels and Juju for Vance and Antonio Brown as his late swap. Hoped for a miracle, didn't work out. So the updated standings now. 1 more win for me, and we can clinch the season-long title. I have 6 wins. Listeners 5 wins. Al 3. And Peter 1. The Week 15 Listener League was once again 10K entries, and it did not fill. Sad. Thought you guys were game selection specialists. Can't believe some of you passed on this spot. Because I know how many people are downloading the podcast. I can see that. And quite frankly, it's a lot more than 10K. So anyways, it filled 96.96 of 10K, meaning that the guys at DraftKings had to eat $1,520. They, however, despite eating that $1,520, they did not hashtag make it smaller for Week 16. The Week 16 Listener League is once again 10,000 entries. It's still the best tournament on DraftKings. Rake free, $5 buy-in, 3 entry max, flat payout, 24% of the field. At least doubles their money. Of course, the field is a little bit sharper than the standard DraftKings field, as I mentioned. Some things I saw this week, Robert Foster, 16% in the Listener League, 8% in the Millie Maker. Gronk, only 14% in the Listener League, 26% in the Millie Maker. But still, that's more than mitigated by the structure. So don't embarrass us by landing this overlay. You go to DK Playbook, either on mobile or on the Google machine, on desktop, find a logo, go to the landing page, find the link. It's really not that hard. The way I explain it is way harder than it actually is. Just go to the landing page for this podcast. You'll find the link. The winner of the Week 15 Listener League was Coach Fantasy. Really contrarian lineup. I like this. Matt Ryan, Julio Jones. Matt Ryan, 1.8%. Julio, 3.1%. At home, in a dome, with one of the highest team totals on the slate. This is where you can make the case that the perception of defense is really overrated. Ryan to Julio is always going to have huge upsides. So also Derrick Henry at 2.8%. The game flow has just been awesome for Derrick Henry, and that's played a big role. But with so many running backs in good spots every week, there's going to be good plays that are, 2.8% or whatever. I didn't like Derrick Henry. I don't typically play guys without a pass game role. But you couldn't argue that Derrick Henry had serious touchdown equity against the Giants. He also played Kenny Golladay, another guy in a perceived bad matchup. I like the Golladay play a lot, just bet on raw talent. He played Chris Carson. I think maybe not enough people upgraded Chris Carson's projection with no Rashad Penny. Yeah, Mike Davis was still there, but Mike Davis was going to handle most of the pass down work. Carson projected to get a larger share of the early down work than usual. Coach Fantasy did play Gronk, but every tight end busted, so it didn't really matter, didn't hurt him. So congrats to Coach Fantasy, nice team. We will see you in the Week 16 4-man. In second place was Mr. Mohill, Ben, Antonio, Edelman. Obviously a very, very popular trio, a very, very popular stack there, but he got Chris Carson at 6%, Henry at 2%, Foster, Titans D at 1%. Anytime, you can get a good defense like the Titans have against Eli Manning at 1%, I think that's a pretty good play. It's just like a reminder, the stack you have can be chalky. Ben, Antonio, Edelman can be chalky, but you can still build contrarian around it. So nice job there by Mr. Mohill. In third place was Candyman00. He had the contrarian stack, but a very talented contrarian stack. Much like Ryan Julio, he had Aaron Rodgers at 3%, Devontae Adams at 7%, and didn't think Green Bay would have success running the football at Chicago, but did think they had a chance to show up and play reasonably there. So if they were going to put up points, it was very likely to be through Rodgers and Devontae, like that play. Dalvin and Mixon and DJ at running back. Also really liked Evan Engram at 1%, with no Odell, Sterling Shepard kicking more to the outside, more room over the middle. And Evan Ingram's a super talented guy. Evan Engram had one of the best pass catching seasons ever by a rookie tight end last year. It's been hurt this year. But yeah, this was a really good spot for him. And yeah, nice team there from Candyman00. So go to the landing page, find the Week 16 Listener League. We will see you in there. Now it is time for everyone's favorite portion of the program, the listener questions. Producer Luke, hit the theme music. All right, thanks as always to everyone for all the questions. Got a ton of good ones. Appreciate it. Have you ever been in a live final, or do you feel they are money losers over the long haul and don't even try to qualify? Yeah, I've talked about this before, but it was a while ago, so I figured I'd hit it again. In my opinion, live finals are not about making money, period. It's almost impossible to make a case that playing Qs and trying to get to a live finals plus EV, like no matter how good you are. The Qs are raked, obviously, and they're incredibly, incredibly difficult to win, and so variant because most only award one seat. And then once you get to the live final, there's a ton of good players there, and once again, a huge, huge percentage of the prize pool goes to first. Also, like the seat value when you win a Q, like builds in the experience. So, if you win a Q, the seat value is 70K or whatever, but last place, once you get to the live final, is only like 30K. So like the travel, the hotels, the parties, the actual event, that's all built in. And believe me, I've been to a lot of these things just to hang out. It's incredible, like really, truly awesome. Everyone should try to experience. I think it's worthwhile, but it needs to be thought of as a life experience, not a money-making venture. Like these like clowns who brag about, like I'm a 20-time live finalist. Most of them are probably buried or stuck playing Qs and live finals in their life. So yeah, to answer the question more directly, I was just looking at my stats. I'm down like 9K lifetime playing Qs. Most of that came in 2015 when I played the 1KQ a bunch trying to get a seat to the DraftKings Live Final. Closest I got was fourth out of the 100-person field, needed first, obviously. Haven't really tried very much since then. Question 3 comes from Ryan Armo. He says, very serious question. Wife agrees to no gifts for each other this year. I thought I had it made. Then friend tells me this is a test and she's going to gift me still. If I fail the test, I'm locked into gift giving forever. But if I gift her and she doesn't, I've accomplished same. What's the move? It is a question as old as time, the old no gift play. Let's talk through this. Option A is you get no gift for her, right? So one result that stems from that is she also gets no gift. You don't come out ahead, but you don't really come out behind either. It's neutral. The other result is she does get you a gift and you just get absolutely buried. You look like a total dolt. You lose all your equity. Option B is you do get a gift. If she gets no gift for you, maybe you make her feel a little guilty, but I think you still come out slightly ahead. And then if she also gets a gift for you, then it's just Yahtzee, right? You pass the test. So under scenarios where you don't get the gift, your outcomes are either disaster or neutral. Outcomes when you do get the gift are slightly ahead or just total Yahtzee. So it's pretty obvious to me that you go ahead and you get the gift. And also on top of that, like giving something to your wife, a gift each year, I think is good anyways. Forces you to think about what she's into, something she might like, maybe gets you on the team, etc. Question 6 comes from Jim Henderson. He says, hey, Adam, longtime listener, great work. I feel you guys need to talk less about cash plays and more about tournament plays. You guys don't want to give away your cash lineups because you have so much action out there, so why not talk about contrarian plays? A good question, Jim. So, you guys know the last thing I want to do is give out picks. Like I've talked about this so many times before, but it's obviously a fine line between like giving out good info, which is what I want to do, and give out picks. But believe me, the last thing I want to do is give out picks. Now, as for the question, the reason we don't talk more about contrarian plays or tournament plays or thin plays is because we want to talk about the good plays, like the actually good plays. All these GPP people, they talk about these terrible plays, and then when they bust, they say, well, he was 1%, so it's fine anyways, right? Like it was worth a shot. And actually, they might not be wrong. Like if you're playing GPPs optimally, you're going to lose all the time, like for weeks or months at a time, even if you're good. And that's no fun, right? Like that's not what it's about for us. So yeah, we could say, hey, this guy has a 5% chance of getting 25 points at 1%. That's just dumb to me. To me, you can, and I talk about this with JM on our Friday show all the time, you can still make contrarian lineups with good plays. Like Matt Ryan and Julio Jones comes to mind. Evan Engram comes to mind just from this past week. So there's always going to be, I think, actually good plays at less ownership. And I tried to mention those on the pod, but really, I think considering when we do the pod on Thursday morning, the best thing that we can do is just talk about who the actual best plays are to give you guys kind of a basis of information and kind of go from there. So hope that makes sense. Question 7 comes from Doug Appleby. He says, with Christmas approaching and gifts needing to be bought, what is an appropriate amount to spend on your kid's teacher? And are gift cards acceptable, or does the gift need to be more personal? Yeah, this is a tough one. I think a personal gift is nice, but man, a lot of teachers probably prefer the cold hard, the cold hard cash, especially in like a daycare situation. All teachers are underpaid drastically for sure. And it's really bad in society, like really bad, but especially people that are especially underpaid are those in daycare ones, in the daycare teachers, in my experience. Like my younger son is 1. I go in there, to drop him off or pick him up, and there are like 20 screaming babies. They all need to be held. They all need to be fed. They all need to be changed. It's literally hell on earth in there. And they're making like $10 an hour. So yeah, it sucks because like daycare is insanely expensive, right? And like to think that, oh, I'm going to dump a bunch of money on Christmas when I'm already dumping just an absolutely insane amount of money on the daycare. But the problem is like, just like any other business, the workers aren't getting the money, like the owners of the daycare are getting the money, not the workers. The workers are the most valuable, yet they're working for someone else. So, they're often getting screwed. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. I just feel like these people spend as much time, if not more, with your kids than we do as parents. You know, they're literally molding their life. So I think a personal gift is nice if you know something they'd really like, but I'd often just default to cash and, you know, just as much as you're comfortable giving. I don't know, man. I mean, I feel like this is a spot to be generous because they're important, they're underpaid, and they work hard, you know? And I mean, it's not like they're delivering you food, you know, once a week or whatever. They're with your kids for 8 hours a day. Question 8 comes from T.O. He says, before a dentist appointment, cleaning, checkup, etc., should you brush your teeth or at the very least chew some gum or have a mint? Or do you roll in leaving no guesses to what you had for lunch? T.O., we're living in a society here, man. I mean, are you out of your mind? Of course we brush our teeth right before we go to the dentist. The dentist's job is to clean your teeth. It's not to, you know, like pick a piece of bacon out of your molars. I mean, I can't believe this is even a question. I have so much guilt. You know, I actually make sure my mouth is extra clean before going in. I don't want the dentist to deal with a disgusting mouth. I mean, it should be a no-brainer, right? Question 9 comes from Zachary Schultz. He says, I'm sure this has been answered before, but do you vary your amount of volume per week based on your confidence in your cash lineup? Yeah, I think this point gets overlooked a lot. You know, no one says you have to play the exact same amount in action every week. Now, I typically do because I don't think I'm a very good judge of how good or bad my lineup will turn out. And, you know, it's often, especially in football, like so close, you know, like a big play here, a big play there, and your lineup is drastically different. But, you know, I think a lot of people are fooling themselves. You know, hey, I really love this lineup. I'm going to play really big this week. You know, maybe you do have a good feel for that. I don't know. It's certainly possible. But I would be skeptical that people can actually judge when they think they have a smash versus when they don't. So for me, I prefer a more consistent, steady game selection process each week that's really repeatable. I will say one time when I try to play bigger is when I think there's really only one possible correct lineup. Like I just don't see any other way to go at any other spot. And that's usually on those, you know, prove it slates that I've talked about before. Yeah, there's typically heavy overlap on those, but so many people make mistakes anyways that I try to get some extra action out there. That is going to do it for another edition of the Solo Pod. We'll be back on Thursday night for the 3-man game-by-game breakdown with Al and Pete. For Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody. We are promoters at DraftKings and also avid fans. Our usernames are Adam Levitan, Al Smizzle, and CSU Ram 88. We may sometimes play on our personal accounts in the games that we offer advice on. Although we have expressed our personal view on the games and strategies in this podcast, they do not necessarily reflect the views of DraftKings, and we also may deploy different players and strategies than what we recommended in this podcast.